Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Voice by Matt show. My name is Matt Bertho, and I'm your host. And today I have a friend, a mentor. I call him kind of like the Yoda of what he's teaching me. And I got to meet him in the BLN, Business Leadership Network, where he was the keynote speaker, and got to spend some time with him. I'm going to let him tell about himself and kind of what he does and how he helps people. But welcome to the show, Gene Early.
Thank you. Oh, it's so good to be here, Matt, and good to be connected again. Every time that we've touched base, it's been super. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to our time together.
Well, I just, you guys, Gene is a very, very, very gifted, special person in the world. He is a teacher.
Yeah.
He sees people
Yeah.
for who they really are and sees their gifts. And let me tell you guys, in the same way that I am not afraid to tell people about their gifts and what they can do, Gene is just as quick. There was a couple moments at the BLN, maybe we'll get into, I don't know, where Gene just kind of went, boom, Matt, this is you. This is what you do. But I really appreciate that because we all need someone in our corner
Yeah,
that sees
that's
us.
right. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
So Gene, kind of tell him a little bit about your origin story and
Yeah.
where you come from, and we'll start with that.
I love that concept of the origin story. It's something that's really important to me. Um, and I think it's probably because mine was pretty dramatic and traumatic. I kind of take it back to 12 years old, and that was when my dad died, and I had this incredible moment with my mom coming in. It's kind of early morning, and she just sits down on the bed and said, Daddy died. And last night, and nobody expected it. He was in the hospital, but nobody expected it. And so, just in terms of origin story, that it was at an unconscious level at that time. Took me a while to actually a long while to figure out the source of it. But I am convinced I made an unconscious decision that I would become whole, because at that point I was kind of broken in 10,000 pieces.
Wow.
It was just so devastating, and took me many years. But that pursuit of wholeness is really characteristic of my compelling motivation. And it has, I mean, I think it's true for all of us that when we actually have our origin story begun,
Mm.
what happens is a pattern gets created which we replicate over time and through time. And in my case, that was the pursuit of wholeness. And so that was on an individual level. But professionally, my decision was to kind of get into leadership development, organizational development, consulting and coaching, and working with systems. And I just realized that uh, this too took a while to realize, but I realized that in working with organizations, I was actually working to heal my family, to become
Wow.
my family of origin. Um, and one of the striking things about my career is that each subsequent major client I've had, where I've invested a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of attention to CEOs and their executive teams and their organizations, um, has gotten healthier and healthier as an organization. And there was a point in time when I realized this was when my own family of origin actually crossed that threshold and became so much healthier. I don't know that we're ever completely healed, but we definitely, as a family, crossed the threshold. And
Wow.
was that motivation to bring wholeness to myself, to my family, and to the world, is definitely that's the defining thread, if you will, of my origin story. And it's like I do it to today. I mean,
Mm.
I do it without being paid for it. I do it without having a title for doing it. I do it because it's who I am.
So wholeness. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I love that because I say that as a affirmation every day. I am whole.
Mm.
I crave that. I desire that. And
Well, so let me just challenge you on that one.
all right.
Because until you are whole and own it, you will keep saying I am whole. As
Mm.
long as you're saying I am whole, you're not.
Man, Gene. You guys see, this is what Gene does. So how does somebody become whole?
You well, for you, I mean, it's different for different people, but for you, it's making the decision because you are whole already. Everyone is at their essence whole, but you have done so much work that you have a lot of those strategies that embody wholeness in them.
Mm,
And I mean, even the transition you had to moving out of your teaching into your present work,
yeah.
that was a demonstration of your wholeness. So for you, it's simply making the definition, I am wholeness, not I am
Mm,
whole, I am wholeness.
mm,
That's a key distinction that I make around identity, is that the identity statement is a statement of internal state. Out of that comes behavior, right? So out of that comes the expressions of wholeness, however they are. I mean, for example, your podcast is an expression of your wholeness. But until you own that identity and make that decision and declaration that's non-negotiable, it's still just an event. But once you make that identification with your identity of wholeness, it becomes an expression. And I would say
mm.
there's a big distinction between events and expressions.
So people that are wanting, because JR's event that he
Yeah,
made at the BLN, right?
yeah,
We're building an event together, Angela and I. I talk about unmute now. I had to pull the plug on that because it wasn't working. Like
right.
people weren't signing up for that. But I never felt the wholeness part of that event in the first place for DC.
Oh, of the unmute event.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In
yeah,
in in the way it existed when I created it.
yeah,
Because what I know now is that demonstration of the what we did in New York City was just like the beginning of the name unmute, whatever it is, but the actual wholeness
yeah,
of unmute is me actively teaching and then letting my clients that have worked with me one-on-one facilitate small groups in the teaching that I already taught and actively like you had us do at the BLN, you taught us
yeah,
and then we did workshop with it and we
yeah,
experienced that process.
yeah,
So yeah, I'm so glad you broke that down. That makes a lot of sense
yeah,
in this
yeah,
moment.
yeah.
Um, I want to talk about the feeling because it feels like you said something really profound. At 12 years old, you wanted to be whole.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
And
Oh.
how did that feel? How did you know that? How did that come to you?
The pain. I knew it because of the pain. I mean, the pain was astronomical. I mean, just one simple example. I was in the seventh grade and I was going to a really good junior high school, um, public school. But the teachers knew us as students, knew us as people, loved us, and taught out of that kind of loving place. And I had a friend who had invited me to join him at it was at a girls' school. It was like every Saturday night for I think it was 8 weeks or something like that. It was learning how to dance.
Okay,
They were teaching us how to dance.
that's
Yeah.
cool.
So I was, yeah, and in the seventh grade, you're awkward, but you're going and you're testing out your relation, and you're looking at who do you want to dance with, all that kind of stuff. I remember vividly. But the moment that my dad died, I felt like I don't have a father, and so I suddenly did not know who I was, and I told my mother I cannot go back to the dance school.
Hmm.
because I don't know who I am. I didn't actually say those words, but that was the feeling. I don't know who I am. How can I show up?
Hmm.
They'll know I don't have a father, and I don't know how to deal with that. So um, all of that is kind of like the intense motivation to try and figure it out. It took me, I would say, 13 years to actually find a mechanism, which was a training program where I could begin to actually get real tools.
Hmm.
But I could see throughout junior high school, college, I was experimenting on my own, and not, I would say, not very successfully, but I was experimenting. How do I do this? How do I
Hmm.
become? Yeah, and again, I didn't have the words then, but it really, when I look back, I can see that that's what the experiment was about.
I love this so much. I have visions, and I can hear it in my head of Les Miserables, the musical. Who am I?
Yeah,
2 4 6 1, right? And
yeah,
I
yeah,
love that. That's my favorite musical of all
yeah,
time
yeah.
because he gets thrown in jail for stealing a loaf of bread. A bishop comes and gives him grace,
Right,
and then he
right,
steals again.
right,
He gets thrown in jail again
right.
for years, and then redemption,
Yeah,
and he gets to become the mayor of this town.
yeah,
And this Javert guy can't let it go. He cannot let it go to the point that he sees how much good Valjean is doing in the world that Javert eventually commits suicide
right.
and throws himself in the river.
Yeah.
Um, but I think about this, and I want to. You've had such an incredible journey, and it started at 12 when your dad passed away,
Yeah.
where you started to ask the question, "Who am I?"
Right. Oh, yeah. Oh, that is central to who I am and what I do.
Gene, you've been around a lot of people,
Yeah,
and
that's
and
an
I
understatement, yeah.
and I've been around a lot of people, and I've taught a lot of people for 20
Uh-huh.
years one on one.
Right.
I'm to the point in my coaching career with voice, with singers, with speakers, whoever it is, that I have a system now where I help them find that wholeness of
Yeah.
themselves.
Right.
Do you believe that the definite major purpose that's ingrained in us internally
Hmm.
is to find that wholeness in our lifetime?
Um,
Do you think everybody has that ingrained inside of them to go on that
well,
journey?
my presupposition is that everyone is whole and we get broken.
Ah,
Life has its impact on us and we get broken. Some people recognize that they can return to wholeness or pursue wholeness or whatever, like I did. I had a radical break in my life journey, so to speak, which caused that. Not everybody does. Um, there are all kinds of ways to enter on the healing journey, right? For people who do enter on the healing journey, I do believe that they can and will find wholeness. There are plenty of people who are, I would say, self-defended in such a way that they cannot allow themselves to engage in that process of becoming whole again.
do you think that that is generational? Do you think that
Partially, yes. I mean, there was no question that my parents' generation did not have this as a revelation. No. I mean, they were loving, they were kind, they were dissociated, which made it challenging in my family of origin. Um, but they certainly did not. For example, my dad died, and nobody in my family talked about it until I was in my mid 30s when I brought it up.
when my grandfather passed away in my high school, I think sophomore, junior year, he committed suicide. He shot himself in the chest. and no one knew he was upset. No one knew that him and grandma were fighting. He just went out to the garage and he did it.
Yep.
And my dad thought it was his fault for years.
Yep.
And so he would self medicate with depression pills or drink a lot, eat a lot. But he never talked
Yeah.
about it with me ever.
Yeah.
Like this conversation that we're having,
Yeah.
I never had with anyone in my family on both sides, with the exception of my mom, who happened to turn into a professional therapist later.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly right. That's the way it goes.
So when people get broken, if they're in a family where mom or dad have not went on the healing journey at all, and so, like little Leo, you met Leo,
Yeah.
and so Leo and Max
Yeah.
and Angela's kids Avery and Morgan, because they've seen us go on this healing journey, they're probably going to be more apt to go on the healing journey themselves.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it's the greatest gift you can give your kids is to be on that journey and to share it with them. And the thing about it is, I think about, for example, my grandsons, our youngest, well, our two oldest grandsons are out of the country. One's in Sweden studying math, and one's in Denmark on a gap year. Our youngest in 11th grade, and we were watching the Super Bowl, and their beloved golden retriever died in the midst of the Super Bowl, and it was traumatic for Oliver, and it took
Oh,
time for him to really process that. But his parents know how to do this, and they spent the time with him. And I'm not saying that finished it, but they had the skill plus they had the desire to help him get through that. So that it was, they too, obviously, I mean, it's for themselves as well. It's just the whole family was in, but we were there and it impacted us and it impacted them. But, and the closer they were to Bella was the dog's name, the closer they were to Bella, the more it impacted them.
yeah.
But I think that to me would never have happened when I was growing up, just because the generations didn't have the skill, didn't have the interests, didn't know how to do it. They had lived through World War II and they had to be stoic.
Mm.
So it's just a very different world in that regard.
So, you've obviously helped your family by teaching them these valuable tools that you've learned along the way of your journey, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And what I think is beautiful is nobody dismissed it and turned the cheek and pretended it didn't happen.
yeah.
And
Right. Oh no, no, it was right in our face.
yeah, and
Yeah,
I
they were able to embrace it. Yeah, as difficult as it was. Yeah,
well, and there's a lot of people in the world that families that I know and parents, people that I know that when something happens that's tragic or bad or hard, they just kind of pretend like it doesn't
yeah,
happen.
yeah. Right on, right on. Well, I mean, one of the great blessings of, I mean, I would say, as difficult as that was, it was a gift in my life because it developed a level of compassion I would never have, a
Mm,
level of sensitivity to other people's pain that I wouldn't have. That has been extremely powerful in terms of my own life. I would not be who I am without it. Obviously, I mean that's just kind of the way life goes. Um, but I do think that having the awareness of going through the pain, and that pain could be all kinds of things. In this case, it was a death and all that went with that, but it could be other things too. To be able to go through those things, get to the other side, and then reflect back and go, okay, this is worth doing.
mm,
So for just an example, I had a conversation the other day, and out of that conversation, I realized that I have a relationship with somebody who has who has been unethical. And and as a consequence of that conversation, I realized I had to be responsible to this other person who's unethical and let them know that I knew and that I wasn't just going to act like it didn't happen.
Wow.
Um, and I think that to be able to get to that place where you're able to actually step up and do that, is that's a long journey. That's not just overnight work, right? Because you have to get through all the fear and all the what are people going to say and the
Yep.
judgment that you make on yourself, other people make on you. And that is, I think that's quite challenging. Um,
How
to
did they
actually,
receive that?
well, the thing is, the two things I would say about that. One is, um, in order to take that position, for myself, I had to go, this is not about changing the other person. It's
Yeah.
not about them accepting what I'm about to say to them, but it is about giving them the opportunity to do that. Mhm.
Ah.
So, yeah. So, I've given this particular person the opportunity, and um, I have to say they said no. Now, they don't know they've said no because they're very sophisticated in how they respond, but they've deflected the truth of what I was presenting to them.
Mm.
And there was no place to receive it. And I could really identify with that. I had a different circumstance growing up as well. I mean, as a young man, I had a mentor who I got maybe 30% of what he was offering me. I mean, he was absolutely loving me just for who I was. I mean, I never experienced it before. I couldn't believe it. But the key thing was I had no way, there was no place inside of me to receive it.
Hmm.
And so I could get parts of what he was giving me, but not, and I regretted, I don't have many regrets, but for a long time, I regretted that. And then I discovered that, you know what? The fact that he loved me then is true. I mean, and he died. I mean, he's gone, but he his presence in me is still loving me. And I am now, when I got that, I was like, wow, I did not miss out because I receive it now, even though it took me all these years to receive it. I receive it now, and that really set me free from regret and from all kinds of self judgment and stuff like that. So yeah,
And that's you. That's you. That's who you are as
yeah,
a teacher. He recognized that gift in you,
oh yeah, oh yeah,
and he knew what you can turn into or what you could turn into in the
yep,
same way you did to me,
yeah,
Gene.
yeah, right. I get
And
it.
you've done for a lot of people.
Yep, yeah. So I mean, it's really his gift to you. Um,
Oh,
so I mean, there's this kind of transmission thing going on, which I love. It's like, yeah, we don't. It doesn't stop. It doesn't just stop with me, right? It just
yeah.
keeps, and it doesn't just stop with you. I mean, all the people that you've touched,
Yeah.
and
Well,
the
so let's talk a little bit about light, right? And
yeah,
shining that light.
yeah,
Um, you know, obviously somewhere along the way, Gene, somebody like that mentor
yeah,
recognized, wow, Gene, you have something very special.
yeah. I think
When
so.
when can you identify? Because I can see Dr. Cecil J. Riney. I was at Friends University. He's still alive. He is one of the most godly men, most amazing fathers, husbands. Um, and I was a college student, so I was doing a lot of dumb stuff. But my
Welcome to
passion and
class.
my yeah, but my passion and my light and my drive, and I wanted to be a leader so bad because I wanted to help people, but my peers would never give me a chance.
Yeah, right.
And he would have hour-long conversations with me in his office
Yeah,
where he would challenge me, and he would say things to me like, Matt, you say that you're sick and you're missing classes. there was a time that I didn't miss a day of work in 40 years being
Right.
here and
Right.
helping and serving. And he saw that light in me of what I
Yeah.
could turn into,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to know, like, who was it for you? Was it a few people for you, like in your 20s and as a teenager? Like,
Well, the couple of stories there. One of the people, I mean, if it's a single person who stands out, is my homeroom teacher in senior high school. I was in deep dark depression because I was still trying to work my way out of this kind of black hole. And she would every morning when I came into school, she would greet me, and she greeted me in such a way that I knew that she saw me, and I knew that she loved me, and I felt like she was the only one in my life at that point that actually could see me.
wow.
Um, and so I would say she, without question, one of those people. But I also have to say that this was sometime later. Um, this was probably 30, no, probably 20 years later, something like that. Um, I was reflecting on my family of origin and thinking about, they didn't really see me. But then I thought about all the men in my local church who did see me,
Hmm.
who I hadn't known. And again, I didn't have a way to receive it in this way. I received it in some ways, but not totally. And so there were 10 men who I identified, and I wrote every single one of them a letter acknowledging what they had done.
Wow.
When I met them, and because I went back to my hometown and I met them, three of those men saw me and burst into tears,
Oh,
but they had never, ever seen themselves in the way that they did in that letter.
wow, Gene. Through your pain and your discovery and your journey, you not only started to see yourself as
Yeah,
who you are, you started to see everyone else also as who they are.
yeah, that's
Wow.
right. That's right.
Gene, golly, man. So, what are some tools, if you can share?
Sure.
What are some tools that helped you through this hard time of losing your father and the deep dark depression that lasted? Like, what are some of the things that were able to heal you?
Yeah. Well, one of them was that my mother, uh, 5 years after my dad died, my mother remarried, and she married, in fact, the pastor of our church, because she was deeply involved in the church from very beginning of her family. And she married my father, whose family had actually been founders of the church, and so they were deeply involved.
Wow.
But anyway, um, there were two things about that. One was that I was in college during the Vietnam War, and I came back and I was extremely angry. And the Vietnam War was simply the trigger for the anger that was, in fact, rage that I felt about the loss of my dad.
Mm.
And so I took it out on them, not surprisingly, right? It's how we do, right? This is before I got into therapy or doing any of the kind of change work. I was still looking, but, and I did not appreciate, at that time, I did not appreciate him. So I was having this conversation with him, and he looked at me, and it was the only time in my life where he did this, but he looked at me, he said, "You are not humble." And I went, "What?" I mean, it's like, where'd that come from?
Who said this again, Gene?
It was my stepdad.
Okay. Wow.
And the thing is, it was true. It was true truth. And it's kind of my reference experience for truth, that I cannot deny truth and the implications of it. And that just, there was no defense. I had no defense for it. It just penetrated.
How
And it
did
has,
do you remember how you responded?
Yeah, I was totally silent. I had no response. There was no, because I'd been angry and aggressive and all, and it all went away. I was like, I had nothing to say. I was kind of like, okay, that conversation's over for now. The other thing about my stepdad, though, was that I was 17. Was that no? I was probably 19 at that time. It was in my early 30s when I realized that if I was going to have a father in the natural, I mean, a person, it was him. I
Mm.
mean, he was the guy. So I made the decision that he was my dad.
Mm.
And so I flipped because I would say I rejected him, but then I accepted him. And from that point on until he died, I honored him as my dad. So much so that on his 90th birthday, for his 90th birthday, I mobilized the family and he had his favorite sermons. And so what I did was I collected the favorite sermons, passed them out to different family members and said, write a chapter for a book using the sermon, which we'll put in the book, but then you write your reflections on him off of the sermon.
Ah.
And so we did that. And then I made a website for him and business cards and I just created the whole thing. We had this wonderful, wonderful birthday party where we gave it. It was the only time I ever saw him cry.
Oh.
And when I gave him the website, he just broke down in tears. And that was even before he got the book. Um, but the consequence of that was that when he was on his deathbed, I was able to have conversations with him that nobody else in the family could
Man.
because of that intimacy that had been developed. And all that comes from when he said, I reject him. He goes, you're not humble. It's like it's quite a little journey with him.
Yeah, he changed your life forever.
Oh, he did. He did. He did.
And you are changing people's lives forever
Yeah.
with that demeanor, with
Yeah.
that work.
Yeah.
And because, there have been
Well,
times.
I attribute whatever humility I have developed to him because he planted the true seeds. The whole thing is about it's the embodiment of truth that then manifests itself in expression.
Mm.
And he planted that seed of humility in a way that I never would have had otherwise.
And that seed that he planted was planted with love and truth.
Planted with truth. I don't know that I felt like it was love, but it definitely was truth.
But from him, though,
Maybe.
because to have that impact.
I mean, I can think about that. It was not my experience that it was done in love.
Huh.
It was done in frustration.
Ah.
But it doesn't matter. It was truth.
Wow. So, what's another tool, Gene, that
Yeah.
you discovered maybe in your 20s or 30s that helped you tremendously?
Oh, one of the most powerful is what we did at the BLN summit. Is the process I call identification, and that is pervasive in my life. So one of the things I do is I think about how do we become fully congruent, right?
Mm.
And in my mind, fully congruent is a way of being. You show up in this way without thinking about it. It's unconscious excellence, right? And that there's a progression there. You go, and in my mind, it starts with the idea. For example, you say the idea of humility. What is that? Well, maybe it's your definition. And if you get a true definition of of a thread in your life, then you can be set, but you have to follow through. So the next thing is you have to have an embodied experience of that. Right. So my embodied experience was when he spoke truth to me, it penetrated through all my self-protection and defenses and everything. And I couldn't get away from it. Right. The third thing is practice. So one of the ways that happened was I found myself judging other people. And within minutes, if not hours, I found myself doing the very same thing that I was judging that other person for. which I
Mm.
felt like that was a spiritual um, discipling even of myself to integrate humility, because say to make judgments is to say I'm different than you.
Mm.
And the whole process of identification is not saying I'm different, it's saying you and I are the same.
Mm.
So that's the third level of what I call levels of engagement is the practice. The fourth level is where it becomes a skill. And a skill is where it's so well integrated that I'm confident that I can choose to activate humility at any point in time, for example, or anything else, and get the outcome that humility generates. So I know I have faith, I trust that. And then the fifth level of engagement is the way of being, which is you just do it without thinking. So when you apply
Huh.
this, you apply this to identification. The identification thing is you recognize something in someone. It could be something very good, could be something that's not very good, where you go, wow, that's, gosh, I'm glad I'm not that person, right? It could be, those are the kind of ends of the spectrum and then things in between. Um, and what you do is you just go, I recognize these characters, say, for example, three characteristics of someone I admire. So, for example, Nelson Mandela was one of my first um, people that I use this with because of what prison had done for him.
Yep. Keep going.
Okay. So I recognized that I was in a prison. And I went, now, wait a second. He came out of prison, and it wasn't until he had made that shift and forgiven his jailers and forgiven the apartheid and forgiven that he was free to come out of jail. He could have
Wow.
left the jail, but he was not free until he forgave,
Mm.
right? And so I realized that I was in a psychological jail, not a physical jail, but a psychological
Wow.
jail, and that I could come out, and that the door was waiting for me to go through, but I could not go through it until I forgave.
Mm.
And so there was this deep, deep, deep level of forgiveness. And so that was identification with Nelson Mandela, and the resource he showed me was his ability to be unjustly imprisoned, which I felt that to be true for myself. That's
Wow.
identification. I've been unjustly imprisoned, by my family of origin, by my decisions for myself, by all kinds of stuff. Yeah, mostly internal, not external, actually. Um, but then I say, okay, that's not the only characteristic. The other thing is that he found the way out of jail. It wasn't because of the regime change, it was because he learned to forgive.
Mm.
And so I said, okay, so I identify with that. Okay, what do I need to do in order to forgive, and who and what and where and when? I went through that process, and I felt the the shackles, so to speak, the chains, the bars of the jail just fall away. Right. So I was no longer bound um, in that, and I was free. I was free because of the forgiveness. And so that freedom has grown. So the thing is, it's not a one-time deal. It's like you keep expanding your experience of that freedom that is associated with forgiveness. There are other ways to come into freedom than forgiveness, but that is a powerful way to do it. And yeah, so that process is to ask the question, how is what I see in you, how is what I experience of you true of me?
Mm.
Identify three characteristics about the other person. Find a memory where those three characteristics are dominant for yourself. Identify, step into that and say, that's me. Then you make the identity statement. I am, in this case, I am forgiveness, right? And out of that identity of I am forgiveness, I forgive. And
Mm.
then I use the process of forgiveness, and I identify who, and I forgive them. I release them, release my judgment of them, or attachment to that judgment. And so there's this continual freedom that gets manifest because, we live life and you can be making judgments all the time,
Yeah.
but you don't have to stay there.
Man. Man, Gene. That's so good. Like it, I've seen you do this in real life. in front of people. I've seen you do this in front of me and had me do this and
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
own
Yeah.
this experience. And, uh, I can just say this to the audience. This process that Gene just talked about, you can rewind the last 20 minutes and listen to it. Um, but it is life changing.
Yeah. Yeah, it
It
is.
is absolutely life changing.
Yeah.
There is freedom in it because
Yeah.
you free yourself
Yeah.
to that opportunity.
Yeah. And, the thing, what I said about the spectrum or the continuum, you do this with people you admire and think, I'm not like them, but in fact, we are. But you also do it with people that you despise and go, okay, what is it about that person I despise? How is that true of me?
Wow.
And then you
That's the hardest
resolve
one.
that is. But then you resolve that for yourself. And when you resolve it for yourself, then you can interact with that person that you despise and change their life
Wow.
because you've changed.
Whew. Man, Gene. I think we're just going to have you on like every 2 months just as a little refresher for everybody.
Yeah.
Um, so tell us about what you're doing right now. Like what's going on with Gene Early right now, like in your life. And I know you have some books, some workbooks, some programs for people. Tell them a
Yeah.
little bit about that.
Yeah. So right now, the kind of the on this kind of aspect, if you will, of what I'm doing, because I'm doing a lot of different things, right? But this particular aspect of what I'm doing, um, are I've got two different 10x mindset programs that they're really my learning laboratory. I'm doing it for the participants, but I get 10 times more than they do because I'm totally invested in. So I'm doing it started with a colleague in India and who co-founded an online summit, and we got to talking, and I ended up doing a session in the summit. And he said, "Hey, what do you think we do a program?" Because it was like you just kind of an hour and a half, you just kind of basically touch it. You don't really go deep into it, but
Yeah.
you get the idea. So in that 5 levels of engagement, that seminar was like an idea for people. Oh, this is something. But in order to get the embodied experience, you have to either be very tuned to the idea, or you have to actually have some opportunity to interact and have an experience. So anyway, then that first program, which was 3 years ago, I did one of the things I did was I wanted to develop for myself a 10x mindset. And 10x to me is symbolic. It's not quantitative. It is both qualitative and quantitative. So it's not like I want to 10x the number of subscribers I have or followers I have or dollars I make, or many people are like that. That's not where I am. I want to do that for a lifestyle of exponential growth. And what that means is everything from the way I think to the outcomes that I put out there for myself, like writing the book is one of those 10x outcomes. Doing things that take me into the unknown, out of my comfort zone, takes emotional resilience to overcome the barriers and obstacles. Um, it allows me to identify resources I didn't know I had or I wasn't confident in using,
Hmm.
and to use them. And also, we talked about earlier, the willingness to take risks, to make sacrifices, to release attachment to old ways of thinking and being, and all that goes with that. So, all of that is those are five of the criteria that I use for understanding what 10x is. And so, if I find myself saying, "Okay, I don't know what to do here, but I'm going to do it," right? I have the confidence, the faith, the trust that I'm going to do it. And with that kind of belief system, I do it. I do accomplish 10x outcomes. Um, and so I'm constantly looking for different levels of that. Um, that's very much part of the work that I'm doing, kind of like the internal work that I'm doing right now.
Can people sign up for that right now with you?
They can, yeah, they can, yeah, they can. The next one will start in April, and the second one, other than that, will probably start in May or June.
And what does
So,
that look like for like the people that sign up?
well, it's 6 months is what it is.
Okay.
It's very much community based. The two programs are a little bit different. They have different kind of uh, participants profiles and stuff like that. Um, but what's common to them is a real commitment to community. Because one of the things that's very clear to me is that if you're going to 10x yourself, you can't do it by yourself.
Nope.
You have to do it in community.
Yep.
And so part of the thread of that fabric, if you will, is that the participants kind of form into a community. Some of them, in fact, many of them in both of these programs are know each other already, and then there'll be people that don't know each other, don't know the others, but they come to know each other, and it just recognize that if you get 10x value, you have to get it both on the individual level, but also on the community level. You've got to call on the support that comes from other people in the program. And then ideally for me, I'm all about the ripple effect, right? So, as that people say, it's not just here, it's not just with this community. It's like, I'm going to go out and I'm going to be that pebble in the pond that
Yep.
causes the ripple to go out and create 10x experiences for my community. So then you have, if you have 20 people or so in your program, then you have 20 networks that are being 10x, and they can go deeper in it and whatever. So yeah, I mean
Gene,
that's
this is incredible. Like I have a question for you that just came up. All right.
yeah,
And when I ask you, you're gonna be like, but you know, I, I connected to you so quickly. Like I felt drawn to you.
yeah,
I hope you felt drawn to me.
yeah. Oh, here I am.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
right. And same thing with Angela and me. And there's certain people in the world that we are drawn to,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Is that because you said something to me on this podcast in the humility that I'm about to say this and the humbleness I'm about to say this. You said, Matt, I can tell that you've done the work.
yeah.
And that
Right.
makes me feel very good because I have done a lot of work,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Right on.
And it's a lot of work that is alone, a lot of
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But this connection, this energy, this spirit that binds us, that makes
Yeah.
us want to talk to each other. It makes me want to spend time with Gene, and you want to
Yeah.
spend time with me, and me want to spend time with Angela and
Right.
Josh and um, you know Renee and all these amazing people. Like we met a couple in Canada, Robin and Clint, and Angela told me you're just gonna love them, and of course I loved them. But I'm wondering, like, you've done a lot of work, I've done a lot of work, Angela's done a lot of work, Robin and Clint have done a lot of work, Josh has done a lot of work.
Yeah.
But there are some people that I meet, and it's just like clank, and for them too, it's like clank.
Yeah.
Is that and let's just go there. Is that an expansion of our spirit that we feel comfortable with people that are like us, right? Or is it something else?
I think it's something else. I think there's no question that there are groups that are affinity groups that people are attracted because they are similar, you know. But that's different than what you're describing. I mean, what you're describing is much deeper
Yes.
in terms of the bond and all that goes with that.
What is that?
Well, I mean, I think that's the spirit of God.
Yeah.
Yeah. And because I mean, I think we understand that you have your natural man, you have your spirit man or spirit person, right?
Yeah, I've never
And
heard anyone say that, but go ahead. I can't wait to hear this.
um, so the way I think about it is that we have an essential self. Everyone does has an essential self, which is our spirit person.
Is that the soul?
No, no, the
No.
soul for me is your mind, your will, and your emotions. Right. So that's your soul is your natural man, natural person. Um, your spirit is God given creation of who you are. Now, doesn't mean you know your spirit person because many people don't. But when you resonate at the level you're talking about, you are resonating with their spirit person, their essential self.
Whoa. Can everyone resonate with their spiritual self?
No,
Why?
because their soulish self, their ego, their natural person gets in the way. In other words, it's that's the emotional resilience piece, for example, of the 10x mindset. Is you have to be willing and able to release the emotional baggage that we carry and the self beliefs that we carry that are limiting, and all that goes to all that is released.
Ah, man, Gene. Like, okay, so I was just talking, and we've talked about this, but I was just talking to one of my clients yesterday
Yeah,
about my gift. All right.
yeah, yeah,
And I was talking about how when people would share that darkness, that stuff, the ego yucky
yeah,
stuff,
right,
that eventually I would see them glow. Like I would
yeah,
feel this presence of spirit
right.
that
Yeah.
was not there before.
It was not
It
released.
wasn't it was not released.
Yeah,
So, I'm a voice coach and I know what I'm doing with that. But as a person that spent a lot of time doing this work with people, how important, this is huge, this moment, how important, Gene, is it for somebody to speak out loud that darkness, that hardship, that ego? How important is it for them to speak it out loud versus writing it down or just thinking about it?
um, I think there's no question that when people are able to verbalize that
Mm,
to a witness, say
mm.
you're a witness in that process. Not everybody is, and verbalizing it to a non-witness is different than verbalizing it to a witness.
So identify a witness.
A witness is somebody who sees you for who you are.
Mm,
And so when you start to verbalize the darkness, they see your light,
mm.
and at the same time, do not deny the darkness. And they hold that space for you to be there. And because they're able to do that, and they become safe. And as a result, you are able to express more and more of the darkness. And as you express it to a witness, it gets healed.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the only way that you get healed, but that is one of the ways you get healed.
And I know in the Bible it actually says that.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Man, Jane, I'm so thankful for you. And
Thank you. Thank you.
um, I'm excited because at the beginning, before we got on the call, Gene was like, Matt, I've been thinking about what we talked about, and I'm ready to shine my light. And
In a
that
different way.
in a different way.
I don't deny that I shine my light, but it's like in a much broader way.
Yeah, it's time to make the light a little bit more global.
Yeah. Yeah, right on.
So
One
Gene,
thing. Yeah, go
go ahead.
ahead.
What were you gonna say?
No, no, go ahead.
Well, I have. Do you have time? Do you have time to
Yeah, I
keep going?
do. I have
Okay.
plenty of them. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well, first say what you were gonna say because I want to hear what you were gonna say.
I do. It went out of my mind. Oh, cheep.
That's all right.
Uh,
But we were talking about shining your light, the big light, the spotlight.
Yeah. So I think what's clear for me is that it's a good example of what I'm talking about, right? Because I have historically put limits on myself around shining that light. So I would say to myself, for example, one on one, I can do anything, right? In certain kind of small groups, I mean, up to maybe 150 or something like that groups, I can get up and shine. But to go global with that, which is uh, kind of today's world,
Yeah.
right? That's a whole different dimension, and I would say, the truth is that while I'm visible at one level, I don't want to be visible at these other levels.
Yeah.
But that's all changed. Now, how that gets expressed, that's 10x for me,
Yeah.
because I have been exploring what it means to be publicly visible. And there are a number of avenues to doing that I absolutely reject.
Yeah.
I will not go those ways.
Yeah. What are
Because
some of those that you reject?
well, so for example, one thing that I reject is I've eh, part of being public in a broader cultural context is you go online and you become a social media influencer.
Correct.
And so in my explorations, I've encountered some of these people.
Oh yeah.
And and what struck me was I was attracted initially because people say, I just want to serve you. Until I realized what that really means is I want to serve you means what can I sell you?
Yeah.
And I went, oh, okay. So I reject that. I'm not into that. I'm
Yep.
not into that. I don't because I'm not in that mode of buying.
Yeah.
Um, as good as whatever they may have is, because some of the people that I've encountered, they actually have very good programs, but at a character level, I would not, because they're manipulative in how they sell it.
Yep.
They're
I
afraid.
feel the same way. And
Yeah,
it's something that I struggle with on how to promote myself
yeah,
and how to get clients to work with
yeah,
me
yeah.
without um manipulating people to buying something that it feels very superficial to do it that way.
I agree. So what are the one just a tactic on that level that has worked for me to now when I was more hidden, I was hidden, but I came out of it, is to give other people the power and the interest to promote me themselves rather than me promote myself.
Hmm. And that's
Uh,
been the best thing for me when my
yeah,
clients that I've worked with refer me.
yeah,
That's
right.
always the best way.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Also people being around you, you had people that want to work with you. And when
Yeah,
I was at the BLN and gave my talks, it's the same thing. They experience being with me, and therefore lots of them want to work with me now,
yeah,
right?
right.
Um, so yeah, that I'm glad that you clarified that. That's good.
Yeah.
I have 4 questions for you, which I'm very
Okay.
interested in. I always
Okay.
ask these 4 questions towards the end of the conversation.
Okay.
Um, so the first question was asked to me in high school by my counselor, Bob Testman. He
Uh-huh.
asked me, Matt, what do you love? And I said, Kylie. And he said, no, what do you love that you're not doing right now? And I said, oh, I like to sing a little bit. And then
Uh-huh.
this man enrolled me in choir. And
Right.
Gene, because of that question, here we are.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
Gene, what do you love?
That I'm not doing.
Just what do you love? Like, what do you love more than anything in the world that is a part of you?
I love being with people who um, I was kind of like you're talking about the people who you felt bonded with. I love being with those kind of people, and who are open, who are responsive, who are mature enough to understand what serving means,
Yeah.
because they don't have a need that has to be fulfilled, and therefore they have to manipulate to get the need fulfilled.
Yeah. Yep. We feel that. We know that. Next question. Number
Yeah.
2.
Yeah.
What makes you tick? Gives you joy? Gets you excited?
um, well, this is a two-edged sword here. Um, on the Enneagram, I am an Enneagram 3, which is achiever. And so one of the things I've been doing is what makes me tick is pursuing outcomes that are challenging and impactful and worth, have meaning. They matter.
Mm-hmm.
The other side of me saying, yeah, but what about just learning to be quiet and be patient and not have to get that dopamine hit from achievement? So that's the work I'm doing right now. But what makes me tick is to pursue those
Yeah, I love it.
challenging outcomes.
So what makes me tick is watching a client have that light bulb moment. I
Yeah,
love that moment.
yeah.
Number 3, what are some of Gene's purposes?
Oh, that's a very good question. Well, so I mean, my overarching overarching purpose is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever.
Yeah,
I mean, there's sub purposes under that, but that's
yeah.
the big one.
Okay, and I'm going to ask this question, but I think I already know the answer. Why is Gene Early on Earth?
Um, I would say to grow into the fullness of Christ.
Mm. Whew, I felt that.
Mm,
That's beautiful,
mm.
and you are growing in
Yeah,
that.
yeah. You,
Um,
you don't stop. I mean, you keep going. So, I mean, that's a good piece about it. Yeah. It's
yeah.
the journey, not the destination, right?
Yep. Absolutely. Gene, any last thoughts to share with the listeners today?
Well, let me start with this. I have a last thought for you.
Oh boy.
You defined yourself as a voice coach.
Yeah.
That is inaccurate.
Oh boy. Go ahead.
Um, that is a small expression of who you are.
Mm.
Um, and if you take the light bulb moments that you are participating in, um, I mean, one way to say it is like a way to think about it, not light bulb moments, but light, is that you're a torch that lights other people's lives. And it has nothing to do with being a voice coach. It has to do with your presence
Mm.
and how you show up. And so, I mean, you can have your own metaphor for that, whatever that is. That's the equivalent. But I would say, stop describing yourself as a voice coach. It's much, much, much too limited.
Man, Gene, you're making me cry over here, man. And this is what you did to me that first night.
Yeah.
Because he saw me, guys. Like he called me out, and then he had me do some work, which we'll get to on another podcast. Um, but Gene, thank you so much
Yeah, you're
for
welcome.
sharing your light today, your
Yeah,
gifts,
you're
and
welcome.
your
Thank you for the
presence.
opportunity. Incredible opportunities. I
Yeah.
really appreciate it.
We will do this again.
Okay.
Let's stay on here after I stop the
Okay.
recording, but
Okay.
everybody, go and how can they get a hold of you, Gene? I don't want them to lose that part. How do they get a hold of you, Gene?
Yeah, yeah. Well, one way is just feel free to send email to gene.early@gmail.com. And if you want to know more about 10x mindset, go to my LinkedIn posts. I have 100 posts on LinkedIn. I also have another 100 posts that never got up on LinkedIn, but they're also available. So, and yeah, those are at the moment, those are the things. I will be having a website or at least a landing page. I don't, I had one and then it wasn't doing what I thought it meant to do. And so I let it go, but I'm looking to find another one.
Okay. All right. Make sure to connect with Gene. You
Yeah.
guys can tell like he has done a lot of work and he's here to help you and see you and help you feel at a deep level. And I mean, he's here to unlock you.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel from him. That's what I see him do to me and to other people. Um,
Yeah.
and it's really remarkable to have people like you in the world, Gene, um,
Thank you.
that are working on their wholeness. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
So we
expanding.
will see you guys next week. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and please share this one with your friends. Talk to you guys soon.
Okay. Great.